Here's a number that decides whether your voice bot feels human or feels broken. It's not accuracy. It's not cost. It's the silence. The gap between the moment a person stops speaking and the moment your bot has the final text and can start replying. Though accuracy and cost matters, but if there is high latency, then solution will not work even if accuracy is high or is cheap. In part 1 and part 2, we did accuracy and cost across 10 Indian languages across different models. Today, in part 3, I measured that response latency. For real, over live streaming WebSockets, the way a voice agent actually runs. And the ranking is not what the accuracy tables predicted. Also, this is my setup and I could be wrong, so treat this as starting point only. Quick catch up. Part 1. Deepgram is excellent at English but returned 0 on most Indian languages. Sarvam covers them all. Part 2. Google Chirp closed most of that gap in file mode, but it's the priciest option and it wobbles a bit in streaming. Links to both in the description. Here's the thing. All of that was about what gets transcribed. For a voice bot, there's a second question that matters just as much. How fast? You can have 99% accuracy, but if the user waits 2 seconds in dead air after every sentence, the conversation feels dead. So latency is its own axis and it deserves its own test. Let me define the number precisely because this is where a lot of benchmarks mislead. The metric I care about is finalization latency. I start the clock the instant the speech audio ends, the moment you stop talking, and I stop it when the engine sends the final transcript over the WebSocket. That gap is the dead air before your bot can respond. That's the real world number. I'm deliberately not headlining two metrics people love to quote. Time to first word is misleading here. Some engines stream partial words, others return one result per turn, so it's apples to oranges. And real-time factor is an offline throughput number that's dominated by your network and server region, not the model. For a voice bot, finalization is the honest metric. If you want the deep dive on why, it's in the report. One more fairness point. I let each engine detect end of speech on its own. After the audio, I feed real-time silence and wait for the engine's own voice activity detection to decide they're done. No forced flush, no cheating the clock. So this number includes the real endpointing delay a live bot actually pays. I ran this on 5 languages: English, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam. Enough to see the pattern across scripts. And one design choice I feel strongly about. I measure latency on a single spoken line, a real turn, not on a 30 to 45 second monologue. Because in a real conversation, nobody says 5 sentences in one breath. They say one, then wait for the bot. Testing on a long monologue makes some engines look artificially good or bad. So I cut each clip to just its first line, 3 to 8 seconds, and measure finalization on that. That's the number your users actually feel. Batch, full file upload, I measure too, but I'll show you why it's a side note for voice, not the main event. Here's the headline. Average finalization across the 5 languages. Lower is faster. For Sarvam Sarika, about 1.0 seconds. Fastest. For Sarvam Saras, about 1.1. For Deepgram Flux, about 1.6. For Google Chirp 2, about 2.3. For Chirp 3, about 2.4. So on a real turn, Sarvam finalizes in about a second. Sarika and Saras both. Deepgram Flux, which is built for turn taking, comes in around a second and a half. Google Chirp is the slowest to finalize, a bit over 2 seconds. And remember, that's on top of it being the priciest. Per language, it's consistent. Sarvam is fastest or tied fastest in every one. On Hindi and Telugu, Sarvam finalizes in under 900 milliseconds. Now the honesty check, because the latency number alone can lie. Look at what Deepgram Flux actually returned on the Indian language turns. This is the real stream text, not accuracy from another test. On Tamil, Flux is quick, about 2 seconds. But the transcript is Devanagari gibberish. It's fast at producing the wrong thing. On Telugu, Flux returned nothing at all, an empty result. You can't have low latency on text that doesn't exist. So for English and Hindi, Flux's sub-second and a half speed is real and useful. But for the Dravidian languages, its speed is meaningless. There's no usable text. Meanwhile, Sarvam is both fast and correct, about a second in the right script. That combination is the whole game for an Indian voice bot. Quick word on batch, file upload. Because I measured it and I don't want to hide it. Batch latency is dominated by two things that have nothing to do with the model. Your network distance to the server region and the API path. In my run, Google Chirp 2 from a nearby Asia region was about twice as fast as Chirp 3 from the US region. Same company, same model family. Purely geography. Sarvam's batch went through an async job queue. So batch numbers are real, but they measure where you're calling from, not model speed. And for a voice bot, you're streaming anyway. That's why finalization on a live turn is the number I trust for voice. My read on the why? Sarvam finalizes fast because it segments a short turn and returns it quickly. It's tuned for exactly this live turn-based use. Deepgram Flux is built around a turn detector. It waits out a fixed end of turn silence before firing. So even on a tiny turn, it holds around a second plus. Great design for English turn taking, just not reading the Indian languages here. Google Chirp carries more end-to-end streaming overhead and a heavier endpointing delay, so it finalizes slowest. And its auto-detect wobble in streaming, which we saw in part 2, doesn't help. Right tool for the job, and for a live Indian language voice bot, in my test, Sarvam hit the sweet spot. Fast and correct. What this does not prove. 1. Live measurement varies run to run. It includes network round trip from my machine on my connection on my test day. Your region and network will shift the absolute numbers. The relative pattern was stable across my runs. The exact milliseconds will move. 2. 5 languages, 1 turn each. Directional, not a statistical study. 3. Clean audio. Cut to the first line by an automatic pause detector. A couple of turns hit an 8-second cap where I couldn't find a clean pause. 4. Latency isn't the only voice bot cost. Accuracy and price still matter, and I covered those in parts 1 and 2. The decision is all three together. So, one data point, one setup. Run your own audio from your own region. I'll show you how. Pulling all three videos together for the languages and conditions I tested. English only or global. Deepgram is a strong, cheap, low latency choice. Accuracy, price, and speed all line up. Broad coverage, offline/batch, budget flexible. Google Chirp transcribes most Indian languages well, but it's the slowest to finalize and the most expensive. So it's a weaker fit for a live, cost-sensitive bot. A live Indian language voice bot. In my results, Sarvam was the standout. Top tier accuracy, the cheapest flat pricing, and the fastest finalization, about a second. It's rare for one tool to win all three axes. For this specific use case, in my test, it did. That's my read. You know your audio, your region, and your users better than I do. So weigh all three axes for your own case. That's the trilogy: accuracy, cost, and latency across Deepgram, Sarvam, and Google Chirp on real Indian language audio, all from a small benchmark I built and can walk through. If this helped you pick an engine or saved you a nasty surprise on a bill or a laggy demo, subscribe and tell me in the comments what I should test next: noisy phone audio, English code mixing, or throwing a fourth engine in. And if you disagree with anything, genuinely, I want the correction. This is my read, not gospel. Thanks for watching the whole series. See you in the next one.